And I remember two of my friends were like, damn, you going to Lehigh? Like, I never heard of them, but like, I wish you the best. Like, you think you can go pro from there? And I was like, nah, I know I'm going to go pro from there. And they like, well, nobody's ever been drafted from Lehigh before. And I was like, I know, because I ain't got there yet.
Today we are joined by one of the NBA's brightest stars, and not just from a basketball perspective. My guy from the league, a colleague on the leadership group at the NBPA, Evan's former teammate and a fellow podcaster, CJ McCollum of the New Orleans Pelicans. Appreciate you jumping on, fam. Hanging out with us.
No problem. Thanks for having me. I appreciate you coming on my podcast. It's the least I can do.
Oh, no problem. We had a great chat. I really went in depth there. So thank you for bringing that, activating the brain. But first thing we ask most of our guests this season 2, how did you end up here?
Yeah, I would say, just like you, I wouldn't just go on anybody's podcast, right? I have to respect them. I have to kind of understand what their podcast is about, and I have to like them and to like them enough to have an hour and a half, however long the conversation is. So I say that's the first part. The second part is storytelling. Like, I enjoy storytelling in all fashions. I've listened to a lot of the podcasts you guys have done and have put on. I respect you guys, and I think it would be good for me to have a conversation with you guys. First of all, you went on my podcast, so it's very disrespectful to ask somebody and then not be prepared to do the same for them. So I wanted to make sure that I delivered on that end. And then I just think that what you guys are doing is cool. I think it's easier to talk to and relate to athletes that have gone through what you've gone through, right? In terms of what you're sharing, what you're willing to share, and then devoting time. I know how much time it takes to do a podcast. I haven't done 300, almost probably 300 episodes over the last 5 years.
Before it was trendy,
I'm
too.
exaggerating. Yeah, I started in
trendy.
17. I started in 17 with Jordan Schultz, and then I had to pull up pod, and then I decided to do it with ESPN. And now I'm doing the CJ McCollum show. So I know what it's like to try to get guests. I know what it's like for guests to cancel, guests to be late. I hate all of that stuff. I know what it's like to try to fit this into your schedule. Like, my life is so complex now and complicated that it was hard for me to schedule weeklies, bi-weeklies with my therapist. I was like, I don't know when I can talk to you. I was like, looking at the schedule, like, I got games, I got this, but so I understand the process behind it. So I appreciate the work that you guys are doing. I know how difficult it can be, but just know that there's a lot of people that listen that you probably wouldn't even expect to listen.
Yes. Well, appreciate you once again for joining, and congrats on everything you've been doing. Obviously, we just asked how you ended up on a pod. But next, let's go back to the pattern and story of how you ended up in the NBA. Everybody knows they see that picture of you as a 5'2" freshman, you know what I'm saying, who had the big ass jersey on, big shorts, but, it's a bucket as a youngin'. So, take us back to, step one at Canton. And I already know a few stories, but, fill in people that's new to the CJ McCollum.
So I grew up in Canton, Ohio. For those that don't know, it's the football Hall of Fame city. It's not a lot to do there. Blue collar workers, probably about 80,000 people there. And put the football in your crib at birth, oftentimes encouraging you to play. Yeah, it's a football place. Like, you play football there. That's what you do. Yeah. So I grew up playing football, but I don't like the cold. I don't like the snow, and I don't like getting hit. So eventually I was like, I can't do this. Like, I can't. I'm playing quarterback with my hand in the hand warmer. Like, how, like, you grew up in Chicago. Like, y'all know what it is like in Illinois. Like, it's cold. Yeah. Like, your winters are real. Yeah. I said, I can't do this. I need an indoor sport. And I gravitated towards basketball because that was the most fun for me. And although I wasn't the best in it, I loved it the most. It was the sport that gave me the most joy. It was the sport that I enjoyed watching the most. And I always knew that if I did something I loved, I would either figure out that I'm just really not good at it, or I would figure out ways to become good at it. And I chose to figure out ways to become good at it. And although I was small, I was not very athletic, I wasn't very fast, I just worked. I really worked hard at getting better in small things, right? Footwork. I worked on a floater. I worked on my handles. I dribbled with cones. My mom would set up the chairs in the basement, and we dribbled around the chairs in the wintertime. I shot with gloves on. Like, I did all the things that kids do when they love a sport. And then I did a little bit more because I knew I was at a disadvantage based on size and athleticism. And there was times where I didn't think I was gonna make it. I tell it all the time. There was times where I didn't think I was good enough. There was times where I wasn't good enough, but I just convinced myself that if I worked harder, I would figure it out. And luckily I grew a little bit as high school progressed. And I think the key for me was figuring out a way to get a scholarship, because my mom and dad told me early on they're not going to be able to pay for school. So you either got to get really good grades or be good in sports. And I didn't have really good grades. I was like, 3.0, 3.2, 3.4. And I wasn't really
What you mean, bro? I'm about to say, what? That sounds like a 5.0.
I'm like,
boy.
CJ, you a smart guy. I don't know. I don't see you with a 1.2. But you talking about a 3.
You don't understand how I was raised. Like, my brother was 3.8, 4.0. So when I came home with honor roll is considered 3.5. Anything under that is merit. Like 3.4 or 3.2 is merit. My mom was devastated because my brother was, A minus, B plus, and I was B minus, C plus. You know what I'm saying? Like, I pushed the border. I pushed the envelope with you as a younger child, and I was smart and I figured it out. But I wasn't smart enough to go to school just based on academics is what I'm saying. So I worked, and my brother and my dad and my mom were big on, if you want something, you got to go get it, and nobody's going to give it to you. And I used to sneak into my high school gym. I just put rocks because, believe it or not, they didn't like a shooter in there.
Right.
They hated it. They hated us shooting after hours. Well, they hated us shooting after hours, if you know what I mean. And it was tough. Like, to not be able to shoot at my own school after hours, I think is crazy, considering the fact that my brother went there, considering the fact that Costa, those that know Costa Kufis, his mom was a teacher there. So she would be cool with let us in. But if another person caught us, they would kick us out. So I kind of went through that for a lot of high school, to where it didn't make sense, right? Like, I shouldn't have to sneak in to get extra work, but we did. And I just figured out ways to get better. Once they got a gun in the gym, it was over for there. Like, I could get up 1,000 shots in 45 minutes. It was that was a game changer for me and my form and my discipline to shoot higher, to shoot more arc. And that's when I started hitting threes off the bounce and stuff like that. But I'm rambling now, but I think the work ethic is kind of what got me to this point. And then luck. I got lucky, man. I picked the right school. The right school found me. I worked on my game when I got there. I wasn't an NBA player when I committed to Lehigh. I wasn't an NBA player when I got on campus, but when I left, I was ready because I put the work in. I took advantage of my 4 years there. But I would just say that I'm thankful for my family. I'm thankful for God. I'm strong in my faith. Like, I wear my crosses and stuff, but I actually read Bible verses. I'm not just a guy who pretends to have faith. Like, I really believe that, if you do things the right way, if you work on your craft, at some point, the world will give you good karma. And at some point, the world gave me good karma, and I gave it back.
Yeah, you reap if you sow. Sow good seed. But the interesting thing is, go back to high school. It's not normal to start or to even play as a freshman, especially in the Midwest, in states like Illinois, Indiana, Ohio, Michigan.
Right.
There's a real. It's like a healthy basketball community. And it's it's revered. We always talk about when we get older, and I still got guys who brag about what we did in high school to this day. I mean, we're in the league, so we don't look at it like they do, but there's a lot that comes with performing at a high level in high school basketball in the states that we come from. So just take us back to, what made the coach believe in what you were doing, or what was your skill set like, or what was in your mind being a 5'2" freshman playing on varsity?
Yeah, I was a certified bucket. And a lot of people say that, but I was 5'2", and I was really hard to guard at 5'2". Scoring on 6'6" guys, 6'5" guys. It was just weird. I just had this innate ability to create space, crossovers, hesitations. I could shoot with range. So I think the range helped me. Players had to guard me closer, and I was just so small. It was easier for me to find angles to get around them. I had the underhand. I had a lot of stuff that I worked on, and then some of it was just creativity. And I think you probably see that with Steph. I'm not saying I'm Steph, but I'm saying you work on so many different things, and then you have this innate ability to translate work to game action while doing it once or twice. I could do something once or twice, and then I could go do that in the game tomorrow against San Antonio Spurs. And the switch comes on, and then my creativity and ability to just try stuff. I could see stuff and mimic it pretty well. And I just began to mimic great players. And you talked about it. I was 5'2", 108 pounds my freshman year. My brother was the starting point guard, and he was a senior. So there was no way I was going to start point guard for my high school team because he was better than me. It was him and Costa's team. So I played 3/4 JV, 2/4 varsity. For those that don't know, like back in the day, you could only get 5 total quarters. It was Ohio rule. You could get 5 quarters total. So I averaged 20 a game and 3/4 at 5'2" in JV, and I would sit out and save 2 quarters for varsity. And I didn't really play a lot unless it was a blowout or whatever the case may be. But I was really good and I created space. And they made fun of me, the high school chants and stuff like that. But then I would get in the game and go get buckets. My sophomore year, it was hard for me. My brother ends up going to college. He ends up going to Goshen College in Indiana. And it was the first time I was by myself. I didn't have somebody to wake me up. I didn't have somebody to rebound for me. I didn't have somebody to push me. And I really struggled. I struggled being by myself because he was always there to kind of like make sure I was good. He cooked breakfast for me.
Coastal was gone too?
Coastal was still there. It was Coastal's senior year. So Coastal was still there. It was Coastal's team. He was, running the show.
Is that the year y'all beat Cannon? Y'all ended Cannon McKinley's 50-game win streak?
That was my freshman year. But that year we did beat McKinley because Raymar was gone. So like Raymar, they had Raymar went to Michigan State. They had a bunch of players, D1 guys, and they basically ran the state for like 4 years. They was going to state championship like every year. And right, once they left, it was like our turn. And I watched how Costa worked, who was a 7-footer, had handle, could shoot. Yeah. He slept in the gym. Like we used to tell like Costa, you got to go home, like you're working out too much. I watched how he worked, and he was a blue chip 5-star, number 2, number 3 player in the country. So I said, if he's the number 3 player in the country and he works like this, I'm unranked. I got to work twice as hard so that I can become 200 or 300 in the country. And I think that stuck with me. But I struggled my sophomore year. I averaged 6 points a game. I came off the bench. I was supposed to start. And it's funny because I never forget it. I was supposed to start, and then this kid transferred over from Arlington, which is a suburb outside of Canton, and his father was on the booster club, and his father basically, gave some bread, and they started him. And this isn't mean like being a hater. Like this is my reality. He started, and I was the first sub, and I would come in and play starter minutes, but I didn't start. Right. And that messed with me a lot before the season, and that hurt. Like, it hurt my ego, hurt my pride, and I had to make a decision on like, what do you want to get from this sport? Like you're 5'7" now at this point, you average 6 points a game, you have no scholarship offers, nobody wants to recruit you. I rode the bench for All Ohio Red AAU team. I didn't play. And I had 2 years left to try to figure out how to get a scholarship. So I created this voice note on my phone. So my alarm clock was a voice note of me talking to myself about, what I was going to accomplish my junior season, how many points I was going to average, how I was going to get a Division I scholarship, and my dedication to make sure that I got up at 6 o'clock every morning, was on the court by 6:20. And I did that for the whole summer. My brother came back and we worked out at 6 a.m. every day, ran the monument stairs, and then we would shoot at night. And that season I grew to 5'10". So I was 5'10" going into my junior season. And my brother was like, you're good enough to average 18 a game this year. You should average at least 18 before he left. And I said, I'm going to average 25. And he laughed, and he was like, well, if you average 25, then you'll get a Division I scholarship. And I went from 6 points a game to 25. And in my first career start, I broke the school record and scored 54 points. And I was like angry. It was an angry 50. Like I was cursing out people that like did nothing to me. Like I'm looking at the coach, like it's your fault. Like this is your fault. Like this is happening. Like, you know what I mean? You know how you just angry, like angry black man. Like I was just really angry at my circumstances, my situation, how I should have been playing varsity earlier. I was mad at All Ohio Red for not playing me the whole year. I was mad at colleges that didn't recruit me. It was just like an angry, like I was playing basketball angry, but like it was bringing me joy. Yeah. And the last thing I'll say is, because I ramble a lot, is I scored 54 in my first career start. And I got a letter from Lehigh 3 days later, and I had never heard of Lehigh. I had never heard of it. I had to look them up. This is when the video game was out, the college basketball game. So I looked up the roster, and I started playing with Lehigh on the video game when I was 16. That's dope. Oh, wow, just to see like what is it like in the conference. Yeah. Mm-hmm. And, life goes full circle. I ended up committing to Lehigh the next season. But I say all this to say I averaged 6 points a game as a sophomore. I came off the bench. The next year I averaged 25, 5, and 4. The same thing happened to me in the NBA, where I averaged 6 points a game my second year in the league. Wesley signs with the Mavs. Nico leaves. LA goes to San Antonio. And I went and I averaged 20. I went from averaging 6 points a game to 20 in the NBA. So it was like my life was coming full circle again.
Yep. And then that first start in the NBA was like what, 37, 38 points. You crossed the shit out of Dirk in the corner. That type of situation.
That was So my first start, like that third year, we played against New Orleans, ironically, and that was when Drew Holiday was there. And I had 38. I had 22 in the first, 20 in the first quarter, something like that. And I finished with 38. And then like that same season was the Dirk in the corner where I big cross and he turned around. That was wild.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
I want to go back to when you were talking about leaving high school and going to Lehigh. Clearly you wanted to be one of the top players. You said you were okay with, averaging 25, getting a D1 scholarship and everything. But even though you got the scholarship you wanted for the most part, where was your mindset at going in? Did you still have a chip on your shoulder? Like, were you like, this isn't enough? Because I know you left high school as the Gatorade Player of the Year. And I don't think that's normal stuff. You get Player of the Year, it's like, even when I was watching you when I was in Philly, I'm like, bro, this dude's a little type different. Like, and when I saw you win, the Conference Player of the Year and you were averaging 20 or whatever as a freshman, I'm like, yo, this dude is playing at a different level with his chip on his shoulder. Those early moments from youth, is that something that you always carry with you? Like, you say you were mad then, like, is that something that still makes you mad?
Yeah, I took it personally that I didn't start right away. I ended up scoring 13 or 1,400 points my last 2 years of high school. And then, like you said before, I win Ohio Gatorade Player of the Year. I was runner-up Mr. Basketball to Jared Sullinger. Shout out to Sully, Ohio State. And then I went to Lehigh. And when I went to Lehigh, what angered me is not that I had to go to Lehigh, because that was perfect for me and I'm glad it worked out. But people were like, why is he going to Lehigh? He's the Ohio Gatorade Player of the Year. Like, I never heard of that. Like, he's never going to be able to go pro from there. And that's what pissed me off. So it was like a cycle of, like, they think that I can't go pro from here. You know what I mean? Like,
right.
That, like, so it was like another challenge for me. Like, I felt like it was another challenge. And you know how we are, like, we're crazy. Like, we'll make up stuff in our heads, like, just to kind of get ourselves going. But I didn't have to make anything up because people were just giving me fuel. Like, he's not going to be able to go pro from a small school. And I remember two of my friends were like, damn, you going to Lehigh? Like, I never heard of him, but like, I wish you the best. Like, you think you can go pro from there? And I was like, no, I know I'm going to go pro from there. And they're like, well, nobody's ever been drafted from Lehigh before. And I was like, I know, because I ain't got there yet. Like, after I go, I'm going to be the first one to get drafted. And they just laughed. And I watched Steph. I watched Eric Maynard. I watched all those players, George Hill, right? All these players went to small schools. Keith McLeod is from, Canton, Ohio. He went to Bowling Green. Antonio Daniels, who does our
he's top 5 pick.
Play-by-play.
Top 5 pick.
Your teammate was a top 5 pick. So I got the blueprint on success from just watching, and then I emulated. I used to look up their stats. Like, what did they average as freshmen? How many times did they go to the tournament? So then, like, when I got to campus, I already knew what I had to do to get to the league. It was just a matter of me doing it. It was like, this is how many points you got to average. You got to have a signature win. Like, I knew my freshman year, I need to get to the tournament as many times as possible and get one signature win, and I'll have a chance to go to the league. So, like, that was my thought process.
So when Duke popped up, you're like, bet.
Because
when you came out, bro, it was like everything was like, yes, you finna get it. Yes, like, it was like you already knew what was finna happen. It was like somebody was holding you back and just let you go. Like, it was unbelievable, literally unbelievable. And like, to be in Philly and to see your team, like, to hear about it, it was like, it was a lot of energy.
Wait, what year was that?
That was
2012.
Yeah, 2012.
So we were still teammates. We were together, Evan. Oh, we were watching that together. We were like, yo.
Yeah.
I think that was it. It didn't even like they belonged in the same court. And that's what I wanted to add to Evans. And I don't want to cut you off, Evan, but to add to you, Steph, one of the top players of all time. You can name yourself. You can name all these players that came from small colleges, and you go across. If it's not high school, every player came from a larger D1 basketball school. And so, you think it's a mentality with that as well? Because both of you have some, and that's a healthy obsession. I wanted to point that out because these are things I'm trying to tell my son. Like, you have to have a healthy obsession with something you want to be successful at. And I applaud you and I appreciate you speaking that, because like, that's the motivation, and then that's what you need to have in you to get to the league. Like, it's very hard to get to the league, and it's starting to look like it's too easy, but it's not. Yeah,
for me, it was twofold, right? I had a jealousy and an envy in me that was undescribable, right? I couldn't describe the jealousy and envy I had because I wasn't a McDonald's All-American. I didn't play on TV a lot. I didn't get 20 pairs of shoes because I was at a big school. Like, I took ice baths in trash cans. Like, I walked to class. I had to go to class. Like, the life that I lived, like, literally built me for those moments, right? So, like, you talk about, like, I grew up with pit bulls and Rottweilers, right? So it's like, you let your Rottweiler off a leash, like, depending on how you train it, you don't know what it's going to do. And I felt like a dog that was caged, right? Like, I was caged and I wasn't unleashed in the right moments, like, most of my life. Like, when they unleash me, like I go get 54. Like when I go to Lehigh, like I'm gonna kill because this is what I want to do. Like this is what I felt like I was born to do, to get to this podcast, to get to president of the PA. Like I knew basketball was gonna be like my stepping stone. Like I was gonna use this game instead of like, the game uses us, right? I was gonna use this game for everything it had, but I wanted to make sure I maximized who I was as a player. So when we played against Duke, nothing against Duke. First of all, I've always hated Duke. I don't know why. It's just like this envy that burned inside of me. Like I hated everything about Duke. I was a North Carolina Tar Heel fan.
Yeah.
I didn't like how I felt like those players felt entitled. And I didn't even know them, but I just felt like they thought they were entitled because of they were 5 stars. Like they had this, they had that. They play on TV 3 times a week. They on national television.
They always get the easy walk to the tournament, NCAA tournament. Every 4 years, it's set up for them to win a national title. And they're like, bro, how is this like a top number 10 team? And they got the easiest walk through.
I was jealous, and I felt like they didn't want it as bad as I did. Like they didn't grow up the way I grew up. They didn't see what I seen. They weren't held back the way I was held back. They didn't have a 5-2 freshman year start. Like they didn't have to go to Lehigh. Like they didn't play in front of 200 people. So when you tell me I'm gonna be on CBS, I'm gonna play in front of 9 million people. Like I gotta really turn up. Like this is for everything. Like so, the stakes were higher for me than anybody else because if I played poorly in that moment, they judge me solely on that moment and say he's not ready for the big stage, whatever. So I was like, I'm rocking out. Like as ET would say, I'm rocking out with it out. You know what I'm saying? Like I got to make sure that after this game, they know exactly what I'm about and that I'm fearless. Make or miss shots. Like I don't care. I'm fearless. I'm hitting shots. I'm telling Coach K to sit down. Like that's what type of time I was on because I had to really show them that I'm better than everybody out here. And you got some lottery picks out here. I'm better than them too. And I also went to the tournament my freshman year and played against Kansas and I wasn't ready. So I wanted to make sure, like, if this is my last time playing in the tournament as a junior, I'm going to be ready. And they're going to know who I'm about, what I'm about. And it's funny because that was my last time because I ended up breaking my foot and I didn't get to go back my senior year. But that moment, people remember and they think that I was my senior year. But no, that was a junior. I was still like, I was a pup in training. Like, I wasn't fully grown yet. Like, I ain't have no facial hair. Like, I was still like East Snow cut against the grain. Like, I was a child still, but I was playing like a grown man.
Another thing we wanted to hit on while you were at Lehigh, and obviously it's a result. You reap what you sow. You end up in a media career right now where you're on ESPN. You're doing a bunch of stuff during the playoffs. You have your own CJ McCollum podcast, and you're basically blowing up media-wise. Can you talk to us about where that started and that vision as well? Is it the same thing? Like as with the basketball, you knew you were going to take over and tell stories and, be on this big platform to have people hear your voice?
Yeah, I think for me, I actually started off in the business school, man. Like I went to Lehigh and I was like, they got a great engineering program, but if I want to get to the NBA, like the course load is too hard. I can't do engineering. So what can I do to where I can still focus on my game? I can still get to the gym at night, but I can have something that propels me past retirement. And I switched from, I was a business management major and I was minoring in econ. It was just, the course load was crazy. I was like, there's no way I'm going to be able to go to the NBA with this course load. So I switched to journalism because I enjoy talking. I enjoy storytelling. And I felt like if I can enunciate properly, if I can speak and really kind of get across how I feel about certain things, like that'll better suit me for my life ahead, like not just in sports, but in relationships and all those things. So I started taking courses, sociology. I wanted to understand people better. I wanted to understand body language, and I wanted to be able to command the room with my voice. And I thought that would be very important for me, more so than having a degree that says I'm a businessman. I was like, no, if I know how to talk and I can learn about business on the side, I can be a businessman who speaks well. And I think that's the career that I kind of focused on. And I just enjoyed covering sports. So I worked for Lehigh Sports. I interned for the Brown and White. I wrote for the school newspaper. I did every iteration of journalism that was possible. I covered lacrosse, field hockey, volleyball, covered the tennis championship. I interviewed players after games. I wrote feature stories. So I did every part of journalism so that I could better understand it. And then I watched TV and I thought to myself, like seeing Stuart Scott, may he rest in peace, seeing some of the guys that made like SportsCenter cool, like with our jargon, our slang, they thought to myself, like, this is really dope. They get to watch sports all day. It's like going to the barbershop and talking about sports all day, but you get paid to do it. And I was like, this is stealing money. Like, if I can do this and get paid, like, this is crazy. You mean tell me I can go cover the finals and get to watch a finals game for free? Like, that's how I started thinking, like, this is dope. So that's why I got in journalism, because I love the storytelling aspect of it. I started with a radio show, and then I went into podcasting. And it was funny because I was hurt early in my career, and I had a lot of journalism opportunities, and I started turning them down because I was being known more for journalism than I was for being a player. I didn't like the way that looked. It looked like I wasn't taking basketball seriously, but in reality, I was just hurt. So I had to deflect. I turned down podcasting before it was cool. I had podcast offers in 15. I turned them down because I was like, I already got a radio show. Facebook Live is asking me to cover the finals back when you was in the finals, Dre, with the Warriors early. Like the first time around, like I covered y'all finals in 16. I was working for ESPN for free in 15 and 16, doing finals and going to LA and stuff. But like I was being known more for that than for basketball. So I paused and I told my agency, like, yo, I got to get back in the gym. I locked in, I signed out that first extension, that big boy extension. And I was like, okay, now they know I'm serious about hoop. Now I'll get back into doing journalism. But I took a break, and I thought that it was unfair to me because, like, for me to be intelligent enough to think about retirement and to take advantage of being hurt, people viewed it as he doesn't take his craft seriously. And I thought that was unfair, but I took a break from it. But I did envision doing something in journalism. I didn't know what it was going to look like, but I wanted to do something in it that was fun, that was built for, I'm a smart ass, right? So like that gives me a chance to be a smart ass at times, but to be funny, but to be, a basketball historian. Like I know the history of the game. I understand it. I study it, and I'm obsessed. Like I watch League Pass. I had COVID and I had my laptop up. I had the iPad up. I had the TV on. Like I'm watching the games, follow my fantasy football league. Like I'm doing all this stuff because I just really love sports. Right. So when I had an opportunity to sign with ESPN, it was a dream come true, but I was also having a baby in the process of being a father. So I was kind of going through like, all right, how much time do I dedicate to these things as president of the PA, as a leader of a team, as a husband? Like, how do I balance these things? Because not like the world is an oyster, but you got to figure out strategically how to make sure your plate's not too full.
Yeah, I guess the next thing on your plate to add on, after signing a big boy extension and, kind of getting your reputation as a real hooper, killer, shark, and everything out the way, you've been comfortable enough to start you bought 120 acres?
I bought 318 acres.
318 acres.
Don't short my man.
My fault, killer. I would never. Called Heritage 91, right?
McCollum Heritage 91 is the current wine that I'm releasing. My wife and I bought a property where we're building out right now. We're planning, and we're actually working on namesake right now, figuring out what we want to name our actual property. But we're building out a vineyard. We'll look at renderings and start figuring out probably 5 to 7 years away from building a tasting room, because we got to plan out the vineyard first and make sure that everything is in place, make sure that's a profitable business. And it should be based on the calculations and the projections, on our 5-year, 10-year projections. But we're in a really great spot. We're happy about it. And right now I have a beautiful case study on a current wine that I'm doing in partnership with Adelsheim, which it's teaching me. And it's ironic because one of the first vineyards I went to was with ET.
Oh, yeah. Domaine Serene, right?
Yeah, we went to Domaine Serene.
Yeah, I want to give a shout out to CJ, because I remember we were talking on a plane. I always give CJ this credit. And we were talking, and my guys were like, yeah, I'll go to the winery. I'm like, bet, say less. I'll set it up. Next morning, set it up. What they do, Dre?
None of them come?
None of them come except for CJ. Like, you know what I mean?
Thanksgiving this year.
Yeah, you sit there and you like, bro, besides you getting your feelings, you start looking, and you have a few moments like that, but that's the type of individual CJ was. Like, you pay for something, CJ hits you and be like, yo, what do I owe you? And like, not like pump fake owe you, like bother you for 3 days, like, bro, what do I owe you, dog? Like, right, you understand what I'm saying? So, yeah. But that was funny. That was a good time. We were able to taste some wine right out the barrel, correct?
Right, we did barrel tasting. We was in that mug lit, and then it's funny because I think we played the Warriors the next night. This is like peak Warriors too, when y'all was like whooping. I was really, really like whooping ass, like beating the brakes off of everybody. And I was thought to myself, like, we've been drinking all. We went from like post practice to like, I remember sleeping on the Sprinter and waking up, and it's like 7:45, and I get home. I don't even eat dinner. I go right to bed. I brush my teeth and I go to sleep. And I'm like, E.T., did you go to sleep? He's like, yeah, I did. We went to sleep at like 8:30 because we drank from like 1 to 7.
Passed out. I think, did we win the next day? I think we might have won the next day. Yeah, we beat the Warriors the next day, man, right? Off a Pinot hangover.
A bunch of us didn't play.
No, bro. Punching them play. I think that was that KD year, probably.
No, we was getting at y'all the rest of the season. We just couldn't win in the playoffs. But we used to get
y'all were beating us by 20 points in 4 straight games.
The playoffs was rough. That should have been like a 6-game series. Like, if we're being honest, like
No,
without KD, it should have been 5-6 games.
Without KD, we should have won.
up 20, 4 straight games. You got to win one of them.
You gotta win one of them.
Gotta win. We play ourselves. We play ourselves.
It could be worse. I
Oh,
mean,
that was the Rolls Royce game. Y'all might not know this story, but y'all had a player who should not have been driving the car he drove. We did an episode about this, ET, what car you should drive. Each player, like depending on your rank on the team or your salary or your position, what kind of car you should drive. And his name is Meyers Leonard.
Shout out to my guy, Meyers Leonard.
Shout out to Meyers Leonard, man.
No shots out for me. But I rock with him though. He's a cool dude, but he don't get no shout out for me. But he drove a Rolls Royce. He had a Wraith, and we blame ET for putting it in his mind, and he should have one. And he had 30 or 40. He had a career high.
Myers he snapped on y'all. He had
snapped
like 7
on
threes.
y'all, bro. It was the best.
But before the game, like the leading up to the game, like Steve Kerr does not talk about that type of stuff. Like he doesn't care. He was like, I heard about this car this guy has. He has that car. He's like, listen, I want you to leave him open every single time. And I bet you we win, no matter how many points he scores. And that's exactly what happened. So I don't know whether to say he had a great game or the opposite. And this is what happens to a guy who shouldn't be driving a Wraith. You feel me?
No, he hit like 8 threes. That was the game crazy. I thought for sure we was going to win. He was dunking and yelling. You know how like you think like, okay, like, all right, we dropped a couple. I was like, okay, we at the crib. This is the game we win. Like, we're up.
And it was lit too.
Yeah, that was lit.
In there.
It was kind of crazy.
Damn, yeah, Meyers Leonard. That was he was catching lobs and everything, G.
And Meyers went crazy, yelling. They was chanting his name. That was crazy, man.
It was like it was yesterday too. The fall is crazy, and so I guess I want you to put on your NBPA hat, and and ET, you've been speaking on it. The course you have to take to be a great player in this league, or even just to make it to the league. It's not even promised that you're going to be a great player. We've all been fortunate to have our moments of greatness in the basketball world, but it's not guaranteed. But the new route journey to the NBA is so much different. But these players, we feel like they don't have the same intensity. Winning's not as important. It's all about the numbers. And then you got the different routes you can take to get to the league. Do they genuinely care about it? Do they have that obsession with the game? You hear a lot of guys talking about that Kobe mentality. ET and I hate when guys say that because they have no idea what that means. And so, right. As the head of our union and what you stand for, what advice are you giving guys? And what are guys doing in their free time? What should they be thinking about? What should they be reading? What's healthy for them to get away from the game, but still something that's valuable to them as a person and will help them grow as a player?
First of all, I think the game is different. The way the game is viewed is different. The way it's covered is different. And the amount of money you can generate before you become a professional athlete is completely different than what it was like. Therefore, the players are different. Their exposure, their access, their financial wherewithal, like they have stuff that NBA players have, which is wild to think about. They got some of the same watches. They driving some of the same cars. There's 16-year-old millionaires now that are out there in football and basketball. And in some cases, baseball, because they can go pro earlier. So I think the type of kids you're seeing is different. I'm not going to say that they're all not as hungry as we were, because some of them are actually really hungry. Even though they're getting these things, they still love the game. They still play the game the right way. But I think the issue is that a lot of these kids are being trained like pros too early. And I think it's stunning their growth and development. I think the other issue is that a lot of these kids are playing too many games in the summertime. It's too many games. And I think, I had this discussion all the time with CP. I talked to Adam about it a lot. And I think you look at baseball, there's a pitch count for pitchers, right? Like how much you can pitch as a kid. Like I pitched as a kid growing up in Ohio, and they used to you couldn't pitch a certain amount of innings. You couldn't pitch a certain amount of games in a row. They had to rest you. And I think the NBA, one of the things we're seeing now is players are getting to the NBA as 19-year-olds, and they got the bodies of 26 and 27-year-olds. So you have a lot of issues with the wear and tear that they're going through. And that's just from playing, 100 games a summer or whatever the case may be. Guys are playing 2, 3, 4, 5 games. I'm not saying they shouldn't play basketball. I'm saying, is it necessary to have all of these grassroots tournaments to where guys are just destroying their bodies before they become pros? That's the first part that I think is an issue in our sport. The second part is I don't mind players getting paid. I'm happy guys can make money, but I think there should be some type of financial education that comes with money, right? Like I didn't have money. I didn't grow up with it. I didn't grow up around people that grew up with the type of money that we make now. So I didn't know what it was like. I learned on the fly. I got lucky, hired the right people, and they taught me. But you have kids now who are leaders of their household financially at 15 or 16 because of the NIL, and you expect them to act responsibly when they don't come from money. Like it's hard. And then you expect them to listen to people in their household when now they're paying bills. Like there's a whole dynamic that comes into play. And I know you guys are all raised by Black mothers, right? So growing up with a Black mom, they'll tell you you're not growing until you can pay your own bills. You're not growing until you can do this, until you can do that. What do these parents tell these kids who are paying the bills in the house, who are generating big boy, big girl income in their households? There's that power dynamic that's now shifting in a lot of these kids' households to where you needed mommy and daddy for a lot of stuff when you were our age. You need a ride to practice. You didn't have a car. You might have had to ride a bike. You might have had to ride with a teammate. Now these kids can go buy, as the saying goes in the South, they buying Hellcats. Like all these kids, they got Hellcats, tricked out Hellcats. Everybody from Florida got a Hellcat. Like they have money to go buy the things that, to be quite honest, like I played the game because I loved the game, but I knew it would provide the things that I wanted in my life and my family's life. Yeah. If these kids are getting it earlier, that's fine. Like I'm not knocking, get it earlier. We got to teach them how to properly save, how to properly invest, how to properly hire. And I don't think we're doing that. And I also think there's better ways we can do it in the NBA. And we're working towards that. And we're putting things together. And we're speaking to the right people. But those are the two things I think are huge issues. The third thing, the final thing I'll say is I talked about the overtraining and how kids are training like pros. There's a certain way in which you should train. I absolutely agree. I absolutely believe it. But I got better when I got pro training because I didn't get pro training from the beginning.
Right.
If that makes sense. Like my growth, my development, like the leaps that I started to take when I started lifting, when I started eating well, like I didn't do all those things right away. I slowly started eating well. I slowly started working on the right stuff. I slowly started hiring the right trainers. I slowly started taking the right amount of rest. I don't think these kids are getting the combination of those things enough, including the right amount of rest. Like there's overtraining. Right. There's guys that are using professional trainers. There's high schoolers that use the same trainers that I'm using in the NBA, but they're using them at 12 or 13.
Right.
I feel like, I'm not saying it's excessive, but I'm saying you got to pick your spots. And the last thing I'll say is Cole Anthony, for example, right? He's been training with Chris Brickley since he was in high school.
Forever. Yeah.
He used to work out so much. I used to tell Cole, like, Cole, go home, go on vacation with your family, go do something. He was like, all right, you're right. I'm going to do something. I'm just trying to get to the league. And that's a kid who grew up. Father was in the league. His mom does well. Stepfather does well. He still had that hunger and that work ethic. But I say all this to say that there was a point in time where me being a guy who had been like Cole, right, wanted it so bad that I overtrained. Season would start, I would be drained. I was like, yo, you got to train smarter. You already work hard. Like, your shot got better. You already athletic. You already got handles. I'm like, take a break. Find a healthy hobby. And this is how I'll put this all together. The best thing that ever happened to me was breaking my foot because it taught me how to disconnect from sports. It taught me how to be content with working on some stuff and then putting it away. I win, I lose, I put it away when I come home. I go do hot yoga. I have my family. I had a girlfriend at the time. Like I could kick it with her. Now I got my dog. I got my other businesses. I have a healthy way of disconnecting. Bob Meyers said this on All the Smokes podcast. I watch a lot of podcasts. He said the best thing about Steph is that he has the proper balance. He knows when to work and he knows when to disconnect and go do holy moly golf or cook or be with his family. But when it's time to turn the switch on, he turns the switch on. Everybody can't do that. And I think that's the difference between good players, great players. You talked about staying in the league longer. You have to have a healthy hobby or hobbies away from this game because this game will break you if you don't.
And you've answered a lot of the questions I had, which is beautiful. And I think, as we transition out, because I know you got to roll with your schedule, closing it out on, you're averaging a career high in rebounds, you're averaging a career high in an assist, and you're facilitating because you got two young monsters, and then you got two other ones coming right behind them. And with Herb Jones, and what's my shooter's name?
Trey
Murphy. Don't miss Troy Murphy. And I didn't know Troy Murphy was 6'9". Trey. I didn't know Trey was 6'9". And so I walked up on him and I was like, I said, Trey, why don't you play like you 6'9" instead of playing like you 6'3"? You know what I mean? And because I didn't know he was 6'9" until I stood next to him, I said, oh my God. But he shoots the ball so well, you forget that he's that tall. And so, how are you, now you're the OG, you're the vet, what type of guidance or energy are you giving a crazy talent like B? I've been a BI fan since I first played him when he was a rookie and he was running a point for Luke Walton. You know, obviously we all know about Zion. And then you got, you got crazy man running around stealing the ball from everybody because you can't see him. You know what I mean? You know, I love his game too. And then Willie Green was my teammate for years. And then he was my coach here with the Warriors. So just kind of, you know, talk to me about BI and Zion, your relationship with them and what you see coming from them for the next 10, 15 years, because we forget they're still babies.
It's crazy. Z's like 23 and BI's like 26 or 25. It's wild to think about. But I'll start with BI because I played with him first. When I got traded, Z was hurt. I got to play with him first. And talk about a basketball junkie. Like, talked about the hunger, the love for the game, the ability to disconnect. BI loves basketball. And I didn't realize it until after All-Star break. First of all, I seen the work ethic. So I was like, okay, he works like KD, right? Like, he's methodical. He works on his footwork. And you play with K, so you know how K works. Like, there's a reason why his tween pull up is like it is. Like, he works on his stuff. BI works on fadeaways. Playing lands, he's going to lift. After shoot around, he's going to lift. Like, he has a schedule and a routine that allows for greatness. And I think being in LA, like being around Kobe, he kind of absorbed a lot. And then was like, if I want to be great, I have to do these things. So I seen the work ethic. I seen the obsession. We went to dinner in Phoenix last season before we played the Phoenix Suns right after All-Star break. And we sat down and talked. And we were struggling to coexist together because he was taking a back seat. He was kind of like, yo, you the OG, like you've been in the playoffs. Like, he's just kind of like passing and deferring. And I said, look, bro, I played with a bona fide killer in Portland, a guy who can shoot from 50 feet out. I said, do not worry about me. I always figure out how to eat. You eat first. You go be aggressive, go get 30, go get 40. Don't worry about me. If you see me open and you want to pass it, pass it. But I said, don't go out your way to look for me. I'll figure it out. Like, I've been playing this game a long time. I know how to play a role. I know how to be the man when it's time to be the man. I know how to be a man. I said, look, I'm comfortable in all these roles. I came here to help you, to help Z, to help Willie, to help take us to the next level. But for us to get to the next level, you have to be great. And I have to let you be great. And we had the conversation. The next night, he went and got 35 or 36. And then he looked at me and he was like, I said, look, I'm going to always figure it out. I said, go be who you are and don't be afraid of your greatness. Don't be afraid of that next step. And he showed that next step in the playoffs against the Suns where he was unguardable, right? Like, he did whatever he wanted.
I'm texting him after the games. I'm texting him like, ooh, there it is.
He's unbelievable, bro. Like, his work ethic, his skill set, he can pass, he can run a pick and roll, he can guard it now. The only thing that I told him that he needs to change is I said, you have to shoot more threes. I said, the game will open up like a chessboard. It'll be like a matrix if you shoot more threes because they have to guard you further out. And they already can't guard you. You already got mid-post game. You love the midi. You finish. You can dunk on the center. You got finesse lays. Shoot more threes and work on it this summer. So now he was shooting 46 from three before he got hurt. That was the next step for him. So I'm just thankful to be around these guys to be able to help tell them things that I wasn't told and help tell them some of the things that I was told, how to disconnect, how to transform your game, how to be a leader, how to do it every night. Like, you got to do it every night. Like, that back-to-back where you don't feel like playing, you got to do it again. Like, the team is watching you. They watching how you move. They watching how you prepare. I'll go play 37 minutes and I'm still doing my 25-minute workout before a practice, where guys are looking like, damn, you leading the team in minutes. This is before I had COVID. I said, I work a certain type of way so that when I get into the game, I just show up. I don't have to worry because I work so hard. I'm just showing up. And they're like, are you worried about the game? I'm like, no. See how I work? Z. I'll talk about Zion now because that was the second part of your question. I've never seen anything like him in my life. I told Brian Windhorst, I said, you know, there's stars, there's satellites, there's suns, and there's planets. I said, he's a planet. Like, he's a planet. The gravity that he has on the court, the things he's able to do on the court, and people are starting to see he's settling in. He's getting comfortable now. He hadn't played in a year, so he was not finishing how he normally finishes around a basket, which is still 70%. Now he's at 80. Like, he's dunking now in crowds. Like, he's shooting middies every now and then. He's showing you the burst. Like, that game against Toronto, we played against Toronto. No BI, no me, no Najee Marshall. He just took over the game. He scored the first 9 points and one dunk. He's running past guys. He's moving OG out the way. And you know how strong OG is. He making African strong. He made OG look like a high schooler. Like, his strength, his explosiveness, his touch around. He's got underrated touch around the basket. He finishes really well with the English. he's learning and he's accepting the fact that he knows things that he's not good at and he's working on them. I talked to him about his defense. I said, you really been putting a extra effort on defensive end. He said, I've noticed that was something I need to improve on. I wasn't moving how I move on offense. I wasn't doing that on defense. Laterally, I wasn't trying to block shots. I wasn't trying to jump in crowds. I wasn't taking it personal. He said, I'm taking it personal now. And you see some of the interviews where they're asking him how your defense was, and he's like, what do you mean by that? Like,
yeah.
He's enjoying the process of becoming who he's supposed to be. And I don't say that about everybody often, because we're all supposed to be somebody. And we all have a ceiling as to, like, you maximize it or you don't. Yeah. I said, look, I don't want anything from you besides for you to maximize whatever your ceiling is. And your ceiling is higher than ours. Your ceiling's higher than mine. Your ceiling's higher than a lot of people. I want to help you get there. I don't need no bread from you. I don't need nothing from you. I'll never ask you for anything besides for you to be the best version of yourself, so we can get the best out of you, so that when this all ends, you can look back to your family and say, I did all I could to get the most out of my talent. And now I sit back and I look at the fact that I'm one of the greatest players of all time. I said, that's all I want for you. I don't want nothing else. I don't need nothing else. I eat good. My family eats good. I'm just here to empower y'all, teach y'all how to be respectable men on and off the court. I'm going to teach y'all how to make more bread off the court. I'm going to teach y'all how to be likable. I said, I'll leave you with this. This is the last thing I'll say. I said, I am an asshole. I am a certified asshole, but people still fuck with me. Mm-hmm. Because I do things the right way. I move a certain type of way. I work a certain type of way, and they know what they're going to get from me. They know my consistency. Like, they know, like, you're not surprised. Like, how I am is how I am, right? I said, you want to be known as whoever you are, Z, but you want them to know the real version of you. Yep. And now he's smiling, and you're starting to see, like, he's a really fun-loving kid from the South who's just really good at basketball, and his personality is coming out to go with the skill.
Well, shit, you said it all, bro. We appreciate the interview. We appreciate everything that you've done. We appreciate the steps you're taking, an example actually that you're setting, because most of our conversations and most of our energy towards this pod is basically the examples that you set, and the man that you are. So once again, I always appreciate you as a teammate, a brother, but as an example you're setting, and paying it forward by showing the next generation what it really is to do what's next. You're a great basketball player, but you'll be remembered as even a greater man. So much love to you for fulfilling your talent and making the most of your 24.
I appreciate that, brother. It's all love, man. You're one of the best teammates I've been around in terms of personality, the consistency of who you are. Good game, bad game, things go well, things don't go well. He was always a real one. There's not a lot of us out there. And I say us because, I'm in that group too. But I think for sure, the cool part is that, like, birds of a feather flock together. You know what I'm saying? I'm happy to see y'all still, doing what y'all do, empowering the youth, inspiring the next generation, and still showing that, look, you can grow up the same way we grew up. And you can touch money from all different circles. You can touch money from all different areas and all different fields if you play your cards right. And I think that's important for our Black youth and our minority youth to see that. Like, use these games and these sports and these relationships to your advantage. Like, we've been getting used our whole life. Like, really, really, truly take advantage and lock in on, like, what you can be with this game. And then when this game is over, you should have parlayed your success into play.